Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to everybody. Thank you for joining us in Halal in Travel Global Summit hosted by Crescent Rating. Today's panel discussion is titled as Building Sustainable Destinations Balancing Ethics, Environment and Profit. The objective of this panel is to explore strategies and best practices for developing sustainable destinations that harmonize ethical considerations, environmental stewardship, and economic profitability. This session aims to dissect the challenges and opportunities in creating tourism models that not only respect and preserve local cultures and ecosystems, but also contribute to the economic vitality of communities. It also seeks to provide insights into how destinations can achieve this balance in the context of increasing global travel demands. I'm Dr. Nisha, and I'm the co founder of World Women Tourism. And with me, we have two panelists. We have with me Noor Mohammed from PATA and Andrew from Enzyme Consulting. So I'll give you a few minutes, Andrew and Noor Ahmad, to present your background and your contribution towards sustainability. Over to you, Noor Ahmad.
Thank you, Dr. Nisha. And firstly, thank you to Crescent for organizing the Halal in Travel Global Summit and also for us to be part of this very important conversation. My name is Noor, as Dr. Nisha has introduced, and I'm the CEO of the Pacific Asia Travel Association. The association has been around for quite some time. We are 72 years old, an American-based registered association, not for profit. But the head office has been moved 25 years ago to Thailand, to Asia in particular. Therefore, our membership at large is coming from the government bodies, NTOs, and also the industries, both public and private sector. We are very much into a responsible development of tourism to, from, and within the Asia Pacific region. So, in some sense, almost 30 to 40 years ago, even before the word sustainability come into the picture, PATA has already been advocating and talking about responsible development of tourism. So, at that point of time, there's no word such as UNSDG, so to speak. We've been talking about that because it is very important while destination across the region brings in the tourists, but you also need to be responsible. So I'm representing PATA this morning.
Thank you so much for the background. And Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nisha, and Assalamu alaikum as well this morning, and thank you for Crescent Rating for having us today. So my name's Andrew Cameron. I'm the founder and CEO of a consultancy called Enzyme. It's Enzyme Consulting. And what we do, we work across food systems and tourism systems, exploring how to bring holistic solutions to regenerate across. And this involves many things. It sometimes involves bringing technology to market. Sometimes it means working with operators. But it means when we talk about holistic, we're talking about bringing NGOs, we're forming partnerships across the entire value chain. So we're working on projects with smallholder farmers, and we're also working with hotels and actually bringing these people together. So thank you very much for having me today, and looking forward to getting started on the conversation.
Thank you, Andrew. So let's deep dive into the topic for today. And when we talk about sustainability, right, in the context of sustainability, we look at the Asia Pacific region. It's a tapestry of diverse cultures and faith with a significant Muslim population. So balancing the halal requirements with sustainable tourism practices presents a very unique set of challenges as well as opportunities. And responsible tourism, as we know at the moment, is not just about environmental stewardship, but it is also about culture. And it's very, very relevant to talk about the Islamic faith in relation to this. So, Nur Ahmad, in relation to PATA's extensive experience in promoting responsible travel, how can destinations within the Asia Pacific region integrate halal principles into their sustainable tourism models to cater to Muslim traveler. At the same time, ensure a good balance between the environmental and social considerations.
Thank you, Dr. Nisha. I think that's a very powerful questions. I think not only for us as panelists here, but also to the audience and also to the policymakers around the region. If I can just quickly try to put it into perspective, I think one thing that we need, a few things that we need to think about. Number one, when we talk about halal tourism or Muslim-friendly travels, um, we need to look at the demand or the size of the market. There's a lot of articles out there, but simply put, if you look at the Muslim traveler, uh, there are almost uh, there are almost 2 billion Muslim in the world today out of the 8 billion population. So that's to begin with. But not necessarily only the Muslims would want to have the Muslims services when they travel, but also there's a lot of non-Muslims who also like to have that kind of experience because it's experience in travel. And then we look at the second level of perspective, that is the receiving market. There are many destinations within the Asia Pacific region that are what we call as the Muslim-led destinations, Muslim populated destination. Take for example, you have Malaysia, Indonesia, which is highly populated with Muslim, and other destinations who are not Muslim concentrated population, but they also understand the need of this particular market segment. So I think when we look at that area of receiving end, or what we call the destination receiving the travelers, um, there are different level of understanding into what need to be done to the customers, providing the good customer experience. And of course, if we talk about other Muslim destinations around the world, pick it Turkey, you take any countries in the Middle East, or even West Asia, from Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and so forth, which is Muslim is highly populated. You can see that a lot of time countries or destination that highly populated with majority Muslim, they kind of like we already have that. We already have that. I mean, when you travel, you can go to any restaurant, you can go to any hotel. It is already uh, providing a Muslim or halal friendly services. But then when you go to destinations who are not highly populated with Muslim population, you can see that they are thriving to provide their services. And therefore, we see that they understand the market, they understand it is very important, and they also understand about the sustainability part of it, not just from the profitability point of view, more importantly, how you can spread the wealth throughout the whole ecosystem. How you can be mindful about being ethical in receiving and providing those services. I'd like to take a couple of quick examples, if you don't mind, Doctor. You know, we talk about some of the top destination today. Especially that uh, travel is becoming uh, more accessible. Countries are now offering a lot of free visas, making it very easy. I would say that, 3 decades ago, you can't travel if you don't book your travel through a travel agent. But today, you basically book everything on your palm through a phone. You can purchase the air ticket, you can purchase the hotel, you can find information, you can follow the social media, you can make a lot of decision in travel just through what you have on your hand. Therefore, becoming much more complex, much more faster, and it is really consumer market driven, and it is very much user generated content. So, as I was saying earlier, in terms of some of the example, if you look at, uh, I just pick up, just two of the non-Muslim country like Japan and Taiwan or Chinese Taipei. Um, they have strived very well from the public sector point of view or the government, they have come up with Muslim halal travelers guide, giving information about where to go, where you can eat, some of the visitation area that might have of interest to the Muslims traveler, and then you can see that by providing that information, uh, it creates the market demand. Uh, there's a lot of Muslim travelers will go to destination like Japan, Taiwan, or even Korea for that matter. Um, but then when you look at what I earlier mentioned, a destination that has a higher population of Muslim, like Malaysia, Indonesia, or even Middle East, then the question is, how do you actually drive and expand uh, the, the, uh, the, the the feasibility of how people can travel and how they can be accommodated with their needs and preferences. So maybe I should stop there and then maybe have another questions.
Thank you so much. And I have a few questions definitely to further explore some of the topics that you have just touched on. However, you made a very important observation here, and you highlighted Japan and Korea as destinations that focus on, or they're leveraging on their gastronomy and their cuisine to cater to the halal traveler. And definitely Japanese food, the Korean gastronomy, is very, very delightful when it comes to the halal traveler, and they seek these experiences. So I'm going to speak to Andrew right now. When you look at the F&B sector, right, it is the heart of sustainable tourism. And on one hand, if you look at it, it is a draw factor. It brings in travelers, particularly, as mentioned earlier, Japan, Korea, for instance. At the same time, there's a lot of debate surrounding food in terms of sustainability. Food wastage, for example, has become a major concern to many of us in this industry. So, in your experience with Enzyme, can you share a little bit about how the F&B sector can contribute to the development of sustainable halal tourism destinations? And what are some of the challenges that they face in terms of balancing the environmental and social considerations, while at the same time catering to the needs of the halal traveler?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Nisha. Um, a fantastic question it is as well. So if we're talking about food and beverage, and I'll touch on agri-food tech as well, because there's a lot of innovation going on there with sustainability, but we're looking at far more innovation to table, right? But first, before we talk about we're talking about halal, we're talking about sustainability. We would like to move beyond that. Like halal is about what's permissible, and I think it gets stereotyped in the non-Muslim community as no alcohol, pork, blood, meat needs to be certified a certain way. And I think there are broader concepts about sustainability within the Islamic faith, which are far more compelling and far more aligned with when we're talking about environmental and social stewardship. Um, but those core concepts of like not having wastefulness and being caretakers of the environment, I think important things to focus on. But the foundations of halal are about health and transparency. And a lot of the innovations and a lot of where the food and beverage industry is going today is about that. It's about health, it's about transparency, it's about understanding from paddock to plate, and it's about how do we make things more nutritious, but also more wholesome and giving back to the environment and the communities. So I think halal certified is positioned very well as leaders within the overall discussion, because it's not new for them and it's not new for the category. Um, so I think there are very big opportunities there to reframe halal to have that broader discussion that I was touching on, to talk about stewardship, talk about wastefulness. Um, when we're talking about the challenges, I think the core challenges, and I talk about the agri-food tech, there's a lot of gray areas right now. Where do cell-based proteins lie with halal? Where does insect-based lie? And these discussions are being had. I understand there's two insects that are certified halal, but I think the geographic scope of where that's acknowledged is limited today. So, how do we get a consensus across these new food categories and how they fit into the larger picture? Um, and there's that balance, right, when it comes to food culture and we talk about diversity, we talk about equity, we talk about inclusion. And I think the objective is to have a restaurant that can be open to everyone at all times. And you look at Japan, you mentioned Japan, they have a strong drinking culture there. So how do you manage an environment that can feel inclusive for both and one culture is not separated from another? And I think that's one of the key challenges. And I think it's not as difficult to overcome than people think. It's about engineering the experience in the right way. And to be honest, as the demographics are moving, and we're not just talking about religious or cultural demographics, but age, people are not drinking as much anyway. That there's a lot of opportunities globally to have an all-inclusive all-inclusive experience within restaurants in Muslim countries and abroad.
Thank you, Andrew, for that's a really, really good start to the conversation on um, how culinary tourism can be in line with the needs of the halal traveler as well, and what can organizations do. I just want to pursue a little bit more on this. Many of the principles of sustainable tourism or sustainability is in line with the Islamic faith and our principles as well, which is fundamentally, for example, to reduce or to avoid wastage, of any kind of resource, water, food, etc. I have read articles on how much of wastage in terms of food waste is generated through tourism, particularly in the month of Ramadan. Right. And it's quite horrifying when you read how much is wasted during that particular month. What do you have to say to this in terms of how mindful organizations can be, right, in aligning sustainability principles of, for example, food wastage and align it to the Islamic faith? I'm focusing very much on consumer education here.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, a great question. We talk about a lot in the hotel industry, and I think when you're talking Ramadan, yeah, it is very consumer driven because it's not like they're staying at the hotel and it's a buffet. It's like they go out for dinner at a different place every night of the week. But I think the experience of bounty is something that's embedded in a lot of cultures, and it's something that everyone needs to have a good hard look at. And what that means. But it's also about the restaurants and the hotels actually establishing the relationships with not-for-profits and the likes to make sure that the food is valorized in a way. And the most important one is to give back to the community and the needy. So um, to address some of these challenges, there are food donation restrictions in many countries, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. It starts with a conversation and what ends up with like partnerships and working out the process to donate the food. But to there's there's ways to optimize through conversation, like how hungry is everyone tonight? Like, let's not just overorder it just for the bountifulness. Let's take the food home and perhaps we can have it as a early breakfast or contribute to tomorrow night's meal. Um, or are there the charities that are active during Ramadan to ensure that all this food waste is actually going somewhere and being put to good use? But it's not unique uh, to Muslim culture, um, and, and it's a larger issue. But it comes with those partnerships and being mindful at the consumer level, but also at the operator level, actually bridging that downstream management to make sure that it's not going into.
Thank you, Andrew. I think this is a big conversation at the moment. I'm at the UN conference at this moment in Bali, and the conversation is about consumer education. You know, how do we bring consumers to truly understand what we are debating about with respect to sustainability, and how do we co-create experiences with the consumer? So organizations do what they have to do, tick the boxes sometimes, but the consumer is in the dark, so how do we educate them, how do we bring them and co-create experiences with the consumer is a challenge, and I think it's worth debating at this point when we are looking at developing halal tourism.
Yeah, if I may just add, is the
Yes, please.
restaurants and hotels are remarkable touch points to have conversations. Um, Sometimes they need help with guiding that conversation, to give a framework. Like not every hotel and restaurant is a PR or marketing or communications expert, but
Yeah.
with the education of waiters and restaurateurs, there is so much opportunity, especially when people go somewhere intentionally. They're going there for an experience. They want to learn. You can use that opportunity to educate them and give them the resources to go back. And I spend a lot of time in the ecotourism, wellness tourism space talking about this. They go there, they learn about something, and they take those habits back home, and it's extremely powerful when you can do it right, because it's lived experience instead of um, prescribed or written, or they've experienced it firsthand and they've learned something and they can take it home.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And there's another conversation at this moment that uh, pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, we were always very worried about mass tourism and the over commercialization of tourism. And then the pandemic came in and tourism just dropped, and like no tourism. Again, now we are in a rebound, and there is a lot of focus on halal tourism as the third billion. Many destinations, like not just Indonesia and Malaysia, but you have many destinations like South Africa, as well as Japan and Korea. They're all focusing on the third billion. So there is a danger, of course, when we are focusing so much on developing halal tourism and over commercializing it, it might conflict with the environmental conservation and communities' well-being. So I would like to just pose this question to Noor Ahmad here. How can we avoid that, the over commercialization, but at the same time focus on developing halal tourism? How do we cater to that demand, meet that demand as well, but balance it by respecting uh, communities' needs? Especially now, we are not just focusing on environmental conservation, but we are really focusing on the needs of the community. How would we balance
Mhm.
that?
I think that is definitely what I call a million-dollar question, Dr. Nisha. In life, when you talk about balance, that's something not going to be easy, in reality. More so into this tourism business when we talk about balanced tourism. There's already been a huge conversation about it. Some destinations are doing better than others. Some are still striving to get to the point to have the balanced tourism. And I think we all know, for the fact that after the pandemic, I think human beings have never learned anything. We went back to our old habits, as if that nothing had happened in 2020, 2021. Millions of people died and suffered across the globe. At the point of what as we are talking now, the world is still not a safe place. There's a lot of challenges and issues, especially that is conflicting or afflicted by human beings. We are the cause of all the trouble. So the point that I'm trying to put is that when we talk about halal tourism, every destination have different understanding, and therefore I think they must put in place even a deeper understanding of the market that they would like to win. Um, when I talk about sustainability, as a question that you have posed, Dr. Nisha, I think it's important for destination to realize that number one, when they talk about attractions of places that Muslim-friendly travelers would go, this the major challenge is that there are only limited number of places that people want to go. So that means there will be lower supply and higher demand as just like what we see in any sector of other tourism, whether it's adventure tourism, whether it's sports tourism, whatever segment of tourism, there will always be a focus of area or item that people want to enjoy or experience. Hence, that become a challenge because everybody will go into one key direction. If I take an example, faith tourism, I just came back from conference in Medina, Al Munawwara, on Umrah and visitation conference. This is the same issue that we talk about. You can imagine, especially for Muslim viewers, if you perform your pilgrimage or your visitation to Medina and Mecca, there are a few things that you dream of doing. If you go to Medina, you want to go to Masjid Nabawi, you want to go to the Rauda. So eventually, these places will be the mostly highly populated places, and it become a nightmare for the local authorities of how they manage the crowd. As we all know now in Saudi, they have the Nusuk app. So that means you register to go to certain places, and then if you use your visitation to Rauda, for example, you get only one chance. You never get to go back. So that's a way that you control the crowd control issues. But then as we thrive, a destination like even like Saudi, if I can use this as example, are trying their very best to introduce new places of interest. That the fifth traveler can also enjoy. But having said that, the market demand, if you go to Medina, you wouldn't want to go anywhere else. I take for example, like if you have a choice to have your 5 times prayer in a day in Medina, which mosque would you go to? You would definitely want to perform in Masjid Nabawi. You wouldn't, you said that Masjid, whatever else in Medina, there are hundreds of mosques there. You will not go. So this is the challenge. Similarly, we look at non-halal, or I wouldn't say non-halal, but not for the Muslim-friendly travelers. A lot of people want to go to the heritage site, like the UNESCO heritage sites or buildings and places. Um, because of this UNESCO heritage, everybody wants to go there, and you start introducing another heritage site, you will be very unpopular. So this is a challenge, and how to balance that. I would use the term IDF, Integrated Destination Management. I think some destinations are doing it very well in the sense that um, not only the public but also the private sector work together to ensure that the offerings or the destination attractions are well spread. That means for the consumer or the travelers, you have more than one choice for you to go. I think that's one way to move. But again, I just want to warn that it's not as easy as it is. Because for example, like we were talking about Korea, Japan earlier on for the halal tourism. If you want to go for your lunch or your dinner, how many halal restaurant are there in Tokyo, for example, or Seoul? So obviously those restaurants will be highly packed because there are not so many choice. So I think this is the challenges. Then we are talking about when we talk about integrated destination facilitation or management. That means the destination need to provide more facilities, more options, so that the numbers can be spread all over. I hope that makes sense. You are muted, Dr. Nisha.
Sorry about that. Last year we were at Uzbekistan during the Ziara week, and there was a lot of interest in positioning Uzbekistan as a destination for Ziara tourism. And it was just in my back of my mind, like, yes, it's a wonderful alternative in terms of what Uzbekistan could explore for as making its destination attractive to the halal traveler. But I just said they have to be more think is really, really critical here. I want to also pose a question to Andrew over in line with what we just spoke about. So the hospitality industry is very well positioned to influence sustainable practice, as we have already spoken about that. Now, when we incorporate halal-friendly options, for example, into gastronomy, when why I say this is because when I went to Spain last year, I purposefully opted for a Muslim-friendly travel. That was the very first time that I opted for Muslim friendly travel. And very interestingly, I got to experience the Spanish cuisine that reflected the Islamic heritage and tradition, and that enhanced my tourism experiences. While at the same time, I also saw there was a commitment towards environmental values in that particular destination. So, Andrew, what do you propose or suggest as some of the innovative approaches that hotels and restaurants can adopt to incorporate halal friendly practices in their F&B sector, at the same time bring the heritage or preserve the heritage and promote it as part of the Muslim friendly tourism experiences? What sort of innovative experiences can you share from what you have observed or deliberated?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Dr. Nisha. Um, Aside from the topics that we've already raised, we've talked about education. I raised about menu engineering and the sourcing side of it. And there's ways to uh, ensure your kitchen operations and design is in more of an inclusive way. And through education, of course, with restaurateurs, not just the consumer-facing education, but the education of restaurateurs that they can adapt with what they're doing to actually open to a larger market and a very engaged market as we're talking about today. Um, I think, uh, pivoting off what I raised earlier, what I'm finding really interesting is the idea of more sustainable, more wholesome, more transparent, no alcohol is a global trend. So there's opportunities for if you look at the hotel side of things to develop brand concepts to be global, and I'm very excited by the that happen to be halal sector. And there's a lot of this with a happen to be vegetarian or happen to be vegan restaurants. They're not overly promoting that they're vegan or vegetarian, but they just happen to be. They're a great, exciting concept that you work in there. Oh, it happens to be this way. So I think halal has a big opportunity in that space. Um, it shouldn't be a separate menu. It shouldn't feel separated from the destination country. And then it comes to the restaurateurs to be innovative in that space. Designing something for Madrid is going to be different to designing something for Venice. Is different going to be designing something for Paris. It's up to them to actually adapt locally how they want to tell their local story in a way that's respectful to the halal principles. And that goes across all sorts of environmental and social problem solving with the experience in mind. What story do you want to tell? What resources do you have available? and then you get creative. And I think, yeah, it's I think it still feels like there's a little bit of a two worlds or a compromise. It'd be good if that compromise in those two worlds just kind of blend, and everyone can travel everywhere and not have to find that one restaurant in Tokyo anymore. And I think with the resources and that education and a toolkit, perhaps um, they can look at their deeper operations and open up to the third billion, as we've been discussing.
Dr. Nisha, I hope you don't mind if I just jump to that question, just to take on a bit on what Andrew has mentioned. I hope you don't mind.
Please.
I think the biggest challenge that we have in the halal travel or the Muslim friendly travel is the understanding uh, of the concept of halal in itself. I think I can say this for everyone that when you travel, especially if you stay in hotels, some hotels provide uh, halal food, but then the understanding of halal food is not right. Often and not, halal food served in hotel is what we call the Indian vegetarian food. So that is not halal food. Halal food are simply food that is cooked or prepared in a halal way. The beef, the meat. We don't use pork and we don't use liquor and alcohol and so forth. Therefore, what the Muslim travelers want to experience is that if I go to Korea, or if I go to Japan, or if I go to Africa, or any part of the world that is non-Muslim country, I want to eat local food, but in halal way. If I go to Australia, I want to have my steak and halal steak. So I think that is the issue because a lot of time hotels, restaurants think that okay, halal Muslims, I give you some Middle Eastern food or some Indian food. So that is a wrong concept. Destination that perform well, for example, like if you go to Japan or you go to Korea, I'm using this as an example again and again. But I think one of the best examples is actually Taiwan. I've experienced this myself before the pandemic. That there's a restaurant at the National Museum of Taiwan. Uh, you know, every day, everyone that goes to Taiwan want to try that Taiwanese meatball soup, right? And they have a section that really cook the Taiwanese meatball soup in a halal way. It's halal meat, and not only prepared halal, but the most interesting part, because they understand what's the prerequisite being halal, they use utensil that is halal. So when I ordered my meal, I even asked, why did I get the different color bowl and the different, it's a plastic chopstick, and they said that the rest of the bowl that they use is a China T-bone, so they understand. So I think when destinations understand, when businesses understand, I think through this platform of this conference, this Halal in Travel Global Summit, we need to go out to make the market understand what is halal travel, and I can say this again and again that when we all of us travel, we want to eat the local food. We do not want to eat another, Indian or Middle Eastern food, because halal is not just about that. I think the understanding is important. I think the industry and we all need to put up the voice, because this is the inclusivity that we all talk about. It's not just for one particular market segment. The inclusivity is also for this 2 billion market uh, that population that we have around the world.
Yeah,
And sorry, Nisha, if I may
absolutely.
add, add a little bit more, if that's okay. But after working restaurants for 15 years, I think it's too often halal foods packaged with gluten-free, allergen um, side of things. So when it comes to the chefs and things and the waiters, and there needs to be a deeper understanding past that. That it isn't just plate and go. There's an operational aspect, there's a spiritual aspect, um, but it can benefit everyone, and it's about being creative and yeah, all the other topics we talked about celebrating local cuisine and experiences. Sorry, Dr. Nisha.
Yeah. As both of you have mentioned, it's about educating, and I think halal. Um, well, Crescent Rating has been in the area of educating the different sectors, whether it's restaurant or tourism destinations. There's a lot of confusion. Even if I sit while I'm sitting here in Bali, there's a lot of confusion in terms of what's halal, what's Muslim friendly. When I ask a question in the restaurant, is this Muslim friendly or is this halal? There's a lot of confusion as to what is being served, and that's really what inclusivity is all about. So on one hand, you're talking about the industry is a little confused at this moment. What is really halal? What is Muslim friendly? What do the halal traveler or Muslim travelers want? There's a lot of confusion, but at the same time, there's inadequate awareness. Then you have the community, and to the community, this whole concept of sustainability is still very fuzzy. A strong understanding is not there on how tourism experiences can be made sustainable. So the question here is, if destinations are going to be really serious about leveraging the halal tourism market, catering to their needs, at the same time balancing it with sustainability, what would you recommend as the way forward to enhance understanding, as well as the capability of the sector, as well as the community, so that the Muslim traveler is going to feel inclusive, at the same time comfortable, that there is an awareness of the needs of the halal traveler, but at the same time, the Islamic faith is followed in terms of conservation, avoiding wastage. So the question here is, what can destinations do moving forward? What can local communities do to move forward? So I'll start with Nur Mohammed first, and then Andrew,
Yeah.
you could carry on to enhance that.
Thank you, Dr. Nisha. I think it's not just for the halal travel segment. Any segment of the industry, the most important part, I would say, to your question is what we call the standards. Standards that links to certification. So, please allow me to explain. If you look at business event or the MICE travel segment, people attend conferences, and you go to a lot of conference venues around the world. There are certain standards that being put up by organizations related to the business event, such as for if you talk about exhibitions, it's UFI. You talk about conferences, it's ICA. So there's a lot of global body that put certain standards. What they call this venue is certified to be an international conference center or international exhibition center. So when you talk about halal travel, I think the most important is to have that standard and that certification. I think as some destination has already did. We all know, like, I'm not saying this because I'm Malaysian, but in Malaysia, they have the Islamic Tourism Center that has worked profusely to put up standards for Muslim-friendly hotels, certified restaurants, and so forth and so forth. And you can, through the standards, you can actually provide rating. In fact, so for example, like if you talk about restaurants, not only the restaurants serve halal food, but also, they also have facilities related to the Muslim needs. For example, like prayer rooms, and so forth and so forth. Therefore, by having the standard, then that can be applicable to another destinations, that they can also use that standard and say that, okay, we also have that Muslim-friendly standard in our destination. Again, if I go back to Malaysia as an example, despite the point that Malaysia has a bigger population of Muslim, but also there's non-Muslim in the country. Uh, that means the non-Muslim are also aware that the Muslim-friendly market are large, and we see there are many restaurants in Malaysia that is operated by non-Muslim, but they are in compliance with the halal, and they apply for the certification. I've been to some restaurant in Kuala Lumpur and other parts of the country that we clearly know is a non-Muslim restaurant, but it's halal food because they have the certification. They even have a room for prayer. So to me, there's nothing wrong for either a non-Muslim to operate Muslim-friendly facilities like restaurant and so forth. And then when we have this standard, the standard can be applicable not only to restaurants, to hotels, to airlines, and all the segment of the tourism industry. So I think this is a very important issue that maybe there should be a body, international body to govern that. Otherwise, as we see now, like for me, Pata is based in Thailand. There are already effort being put to certify halal product. You know that Thailand is one of the world biggest producer of food product. So you go to any supermarkets, it is very easy for you to identify which chicken is halal, which chicken is not halal, and also all the other food ingredients. So today, unfortunately, I'm be talking about so much about food because it's early morning. I have not taken my breakfast yet. But I think when you have this a standard put into the industry, and I think the industry would understand, and they will be able to provide that services that we are talking about.
Yeah. I totally agree with you about standards. When you look at GSTC, for example, Singapore, we have adopted GSTC standards, and to certify our uh, attractions, hotels as well, like the Marina Bay Sands and all, to ensure that best practices are adopted and standards are adhered to so that the sector know exactly or the attractions know exactly what to do. And there's a systematic framework. So, in line with that, what are your thoughts in terms of doing something very similar to GSTC? Perhaps even Crescent Rating does that, bring in the principles of sustainability and halal tourism and look at the standards. And organizations or destinations, they're very serious about addressing the halal tourism market, would then adopt these standards or go for these standards to be certified. What would you think about that sort of a possibility? Would that help to clarify some of the perceptions or misperceptions in the industry? Those organizations or destinations have got no clue where to start. And I hear that all the time. They ask this question like, where do we start? We don't know where exactly what to do, right? Do you think prison rating coming up with standards would be a good move forward?
Is that one
Um,
for me?
and,
There you go.
Maybe if I can just jump very quickly, Andrew. I think I
Yes,
would say
please.
the answer to that question, Dr. Nisha, is a plug-in. When you create a standard, because I was involved in creating a standard for the mice business when I was in Malaysia before I moved into PETA. Um, a plug-in of uh, key component of sustainability into the halal standard is not that difficult because when we talk about halal certification, there's a lot of areas of sustainability is already in place. It's just that we don't call it sustainability. For example, like you talk about food waste, you talk about certain other areas that is important for sustainability is already in the halal standard. So I think a plug-in to make it more clear. I think that's what the market can do. It's just that who will be the authority body to provide that certification, that is one key areas. And I believe for the open market, it shouldn't be just one body to do that. Just like what you mentioned about GSTC with accessibility in Singapore, that is good, but there's a lot of other people that can also provide that kind of certification. So I think all in all, what's important for us to think about is that not only we provide that certification or the compliances by the industry, but more so about how that we also impose that sustainability in mind to the consumer. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the provider, but also it's also about the user. Like I'm sure that all of you know, India has launched what they call travel for life for quite some time already. That means they say that if you are traveling, there are seven things that you can actually do to ensure that you are being part of the good force of sustainability. One of the things is when you travel, you bring your own water bottle. So it's that easy, you know. So how can we create that force to the consumer market that they become the bigger believer of sustainability and also like in halal market segment. Sorry, Andrew, for stealing your
No,
time.
no, no, no. Yeah. No, that's it.
Yes, Andrew,
Yeah.
please add on to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a larger conversation here about
Mm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm down here in Adelaide for a hotel conference, and uh, I was talking with Ascot regarding their Quest hotels, and they have a very strong focus on making sure inclusive for everybody, no matter your background, no matter if you're differently abled. It is just inclusive for everybody. And if you've got something that's just, if you've got a brand, or if you have that trust in a brand, I guess, that it's just inclusive and a safe space, no matter where you're from, I think that's the goal that we should all be going for. And I don't think it's unique for Muslim travelers. I think perhaps the conversation is, how do we work out what the most inclusive responsible tourism could look like? How can everyone have a positive travel experiences no matter where they go? And that's where my head's at, is looking at that S, and then the E is incredibly important. I spend a lot of time looking at the E, but if we're looking at this, yeah, it's how do we make everyone feel welcome? That's hospitality.
Thank you, Andrew. While we are still, trying to be challenged by the principles of environmental sustainability, and many organizations are now at this point where they are looking at indicators and best practices. The other aspect of social sustainability, whether it's local community empowerment, the preservation of heritage, and linking it to whether it's any form of tourism or even halal tourism. I think that's another big challenge at the moment, and we are still at the tip, just at the beginning of looking at how we could bring about social sustainability. And as what Noor, you actually mentioned, the question is, who's going to do it? Right, in our industry, there, while we have GSTC and ISO and all, even for the MICE sector, like, who is going to come in and look at halal tourism and marry sustainability and the principles of halal tourism? Who's going to be the watchdog? So there's a lot of debate at the moment, and it'd be quite interesting to look at, why do we need to do this, and why now? These are, I think, really fundamental questions that we need to address. And I think our panel discussion is just perhaps as a small uh, preview to what is out there. And I hope bigger conferences will start to further this debate. So thank you so much, both of you, Noor, Ahmad, and Andrew, for your insights. I think it's to me, I'm so passionate about sustainability and also halal tourism, and to debate with both of you, it's a privilege. Thank you so much. Is there anything you would want to add on before we round up today's panel discussion? Andrew, would you like
Uh,
to begin? Is there any last words that you want to say?
Uh, I guess going back to the land, I think it's really important to look at the positive effect of actually regenerating agriculture really has, and the economic benefit that that has on communities as well. I think a lot of our discussions today, I think we've been looking at that food service end, or the tourism end of the discussion. But all of those decisions flow all the way back through to the land, and often, depending on these destinations, the land that directly surrounds these properties. So it is an embedded relationship. So I guess my closing words is to just consider looking all the way upstream, all the way to the farm, look downstream, and think about the waste, but also know how to adapt to each individual scenario. So it is quite tricky to, we talk about best practices, and I think best practices are a good framework to work with, but you also need that flexibility to tailor to the unique challenges of each destination.
Yeah.
But thank you. So it's been a fantastic panel.
Thank you. And what about you, Nora? But please.
I think firstly, thank you to the organizers for having this conversation. I truly believe and couldn't agree more with you, Dr. Nisha, that building sustainable destinations and balancing that with the needs and requirement by the Muslim travelers are very important. As I said earlier on in my opening, that there are 2 billion Muslim around the world, so there's a huge market. I think we need to be inclusive about the Muslim market as well. And having said that, I think one of the most important thing that destination need to think about is how they understand the Muslim market and how they would react and prepare so that the customer's experience, the customer's journey, while they are enjoying their travel on a holiday, like you are in Bali today and
Mm.
Andrew in Adelaide, how you can still enjoy and have some of that safe space, that elements of being halal.
Absolutely.
That's the most important part. We when we travel, we want to have the cultural experiences, like we were mentioning a few times, like Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Africa, and so forth. Anywhere in the world that we go, we want to enjoy. We want to be part of the local community, and we also want to play our part for the sustainable travel. But having said that, because we are Muslim, we want to also have that privilege. And I think
Yeah.
that privilege need to be respected, just like any other travelers. If you are traveling for adventure purposes or adventure tourism, so all those facilities will be provided for them. Similarly, I think that need to be given to the Muslim market, and I think this is a very huge travel segment that somebody should not ignore. So on that note, thank you, Nisha. Thank you also, Andrew, to be part of this conversation.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much to Andrew and Norma for joining me in this conversation, a very, very important conversation. And I want to thank the audience for joining us in this session at the Halal in Travel Global Summit. Please do check out the other interesting sessions that we have as well. Till then, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Thanks, everybody.